All right, welcome everybody to Legal Tech Week for the Halloween edition, October 31st, 2025. I'm on the road, so unfortunately I left my costume at home, so no costume for me this year. But I am Bob Ambrogi, and I have a blog called Law Sites and a podcast called Law Next. And I am coming to you today from beautiful downtown St. Louis, Missouri, which is actually my first time ever in St. Louis, Missouri. And if we can wrap this darn thing up, I'm going to get over and see the Gateway Arch. um, so, guys, be brief today, okay? And our panelists today, let's go around and kick off introductions. Niki, you want to start it?
Sure. My name is Nikki Black. I'm the principal legal insight strategist at 8 a.m., the team behind my case, a law pay case, Pure and DocketWise. And I also write legal tech columns for ABA Journal Above the Law and the Daily Record. And I hate Halloween, so I'm not wearing a costume. This is all you're going to get.
All right. And Victor.
Hi, everyone. My name is Victor Lee. I am assistant managing editor for the ABA Journal. I did not wear a costume, but in honor of Harvey and their big funding round, I figured I'd bring an accessory. So, this might not be recognizable to some of you, but, this is a very important part of my childhood. So,
And I assume you're going to be trick-or-treating later, or not you, but
yeah,
your
he's going as Mario from Super Mario Brothers. So he's got a little cart outfit as well. So, he's Mario Kart.
All right. And Rhys.
Hey, I'm Rhys Dipshan. I'm the editor-in-chief of Eagle Tech News. And I don't have a costume on because I'm still preparing the costume. Like after this call, I got a few stores to go to. It's hard to have Halloween on a Friday because it's hard to rush through a costume like that. It'd be easier if it was on Saturday, but hopefully, like I can come in costume sometime in the future. I think we should just have a random costumed, session some random date in the future.
All right, we will do that. Maybe, maybe not. And Joe.
Joe Patrice from Above the Law. Obviously my costume's inspired by the classic movie My Dinner with Andre. No, anybody? All right. Okay. But no. Yeah, so good to be here. I'm from Above the Law and thinking like a lawyer, and yeah, I guess references to weird existential movies from the 80s didn't work as well as I was hoping. But I do
I
kind of
saw
look
that
like,
movie. I remember
yeah,
that movie
yeah,
with Wallace Shawn
yep,
and who's the
Andre.
other guy and Andre.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, duh. And Andre. Who did he have dinner with? Oh yeah. All right. Well, I guess sort of the big talk of the week was like all the, I don't know, chaos around big generative AI legal companies with supposedly Robin AI being listed for distressed sale, which not exactly, it seems to be a UK thing, but I know it's not good. And not something a company wants to happen, essentially suggesting, I guess, that some potential insolvency issues. Harvey raising another $150 million, Legora raising another $150 million. Um, I keep reading, are we in a bubble? Are we not in a bubble? What's going on? What do we think? Are we in a bubble here? What the heck is going on in this crazy climate right now?
Um, a huge question around like Robin AI was this the canary in the coal mine type of thing, or was this just particular
Or
to
the
like
robin in the coal
Robin
mine, I
AI?
guess.
Yeah, or the Robin in the coal mine. Um, like it's challenging because I think you can make an argument for each side. I mean, Robin AI really expand into essentially becoming like a legal managed service provider, and that takes a lot of staffs. Like it kind of started as just kind of like a contract tech provider, a Gen AI legal tech, company, and then kind of went hybrid into like, legal services as well. And it could just be that they didn't really know how to grow, or they weren't really offering anything that investors thought would stand out. It's weird that this happens the same week that Harvey announces 150 million. I mean, Harvey didn't even announce it. Harvey put out no press releases. Harvey didn't have it on his blog. As far as we can tell, Harvey was keeping it quiet, and then the news got out essentially. So, that also raises the question: how much cash does Harvey actually have? And I was curious if like Robin AI was also, indicative of the investment climate, perhaps in the UK and the EU. Although the same week we saw like a Swedish company, Gora, get 150 million. The hunch I have is that there was like something off with Robin AI that, it just didn't, successfully do what others have done. Although there's a case that the industry is starting to shrink, and it isn't just, okay, like we'll put cash into any and all Gen AI legal tech companies. It's kind of like we're starting to see a few at the top that are just crazy in terms of how much cash they get, and the others are really, having a hard time getting funding potentially. I just want to wrap up this long rambling comment by saying, it's 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 interesting how quickly it all happened with Robin AI. The reporting said that they couldn't go on unless they had a $50 million investment, which makes me question, like, did they not have like a runway? Like, how cash strapped are these companies that they cannot even survive for like a short period of time? And that's the concerning part too, the speed at which all of this has seemed to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're in a bubble. There you go.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well,
No, I mean, I do think there's a bubble conditions, and I think they are probably going to impact the greater AI world before they get into the legal AI world. It'll kind of trickle through to there. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of money being thrown around for not a lot of return. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just reading a story about, I think it's interesting what you say about the greater AI world. I think it was in the New York Times about just sort of the circularity of OpenAI's funding and what it looks like. And I know you've talked about that before, Joe. And so I definitely feel like it's this weird bubble, unlike anything that we've ever seen before. But it also has some familiarity to it, right? I remember back when my case was with Appfolio, and there was somebody there who used to work for Citrix. A lot of people at Appfolio used to work at Citrix, which was a server-based software company. And she's like, well, at the time it was like whack-a-mole with practice management companies. There were like a dime a dozen, and they were popping up all the time. And at the time, she said to me, "Listen, I've seen this before. It's happened before. It's going to happen again. It's happened in server-based software. It's going to happen in the cloud. It's going to happen in practice management. All these software companies pop up. When it starts to feel like whack-a-mole, you start to see this consolidation. And that's what I feel like we're at right now in legal AI. More so, honestly, than I mean, I feel like it's more like that within legal AI than externally. I mean, certainly there's tons of external AI companies, but it seems like there are so many in our vertical. And so I think you're absolutely going to see, like you suggested, Rhys, a bunch of them are actually getting the money. The rest of them aren't. The rest of them are going to completely run out of the runway. And they're going to go bankrupt, get snapped up as an acquisition, or if they're not getting investment, that's the end of the game, or else maybe they'll get some investment somehow at the last minute. But so it'll be interesting to see what happens, but it's a really weird time in legal tech and tech generally, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the bubble goes, I mean, I feel like the last two big ones that we had was the dot-com bubble and then the mortgage-backed securities bubble, right? And in those instances, you had like really flawed, hi Julie, you had like really flawed like products or, really flawed understanding of like what things were capable of. And you had like, I mean, like mortgage securities, you had people who shouldn't have been getting mortgages were getting them, and there's a lot of stuff going on. And then, the dot-com is you had a lot of people that didn't know what they were really investing in, and either investing in potential or investing in, things that may or may not have come true or were going to come true, or more like dreams and projections. But I feel like with AI, like there is a tangible product, and we know what it can do right now. I think the question is, where do we see it going? And I think that's where maybe the divergence is, as far as like some people think it can go here, some people think it can go here, some people think it can do this and that. And so I guess that's where the divergence is, as opposed to like, I mean, it's a sound technology, and it's a sound product, for lack of a better word. So I don't know. I mean, I could definitely see it sort of like being a bubble, but I kind of see like, yeah, like what Rhys and Niki were talking about, where it's like, okay, well, it might not be a bubble, but there'll definitely be some people that get pushed out of the market, and that might not be a bad thing.
It's completely insane to me. And like I've been here since 2016 and I've been tracking Eagle Tech funding since 2016. It's completely, absolutely insane to me that Harvey has $8 million in funding just in 2025. And just the funding that they publicly disclose or that comes out. I mean, again, Harvey didn't, announce this new funding round. And I'm like, how much cash are you like are people actually plowing into this company?
Yeah.
That's unheard of. That's almost $1 billion for a legal tech company in 2025.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's just scary. And it's like, how do you like how do you grow? I mean, Clio got 900 million, sure, although some of it was to like to buy out some previous investors too. So like it
Right.
wasn't all in just like the equity, I guess. And Clio had been around for quite some time. Harvey has been around since the end of 2022. It's absolutely insane. So like if we're talking about, is there an AI bubble? Like this is a obscene amount of cash that nobody has seen in this industry before. How do you grow? How do you recoup that investment? Can you recoup that investment?
Yeah. Let me just welcome Julie to the show, who um, uh, just to Julie, in case you're wondering, you're probably obvious what we're talking about here, but we were talking about the combined news, I guess, of the more major investments in Harvey and Legora this week, 150. I think they each raised 150, another 150 million this week. While Robin AI, contract AI platform, was listed as a distressed company, and I think we're still kind of getting some details there in terms of what's happening with Robin AI, but. So I guess the topic of the moment is really, are we in a bubble? And what do you think? Any thoughts? What
Yeah,
have been? Yeah.
so I mean, I guess I can take 2 minutes to say yes and why. But hi everyone, I'm Julie. I'm in Canada. I'm and thankful
That
that
explains your background.
it does. And I'm actually in Toronto, which is even crazier. I'm after this, I'm headed downtown. But yeah, or headed closer to the stadium downtown, I should say. Um Yeah, we're definitely in a bubble. I'll try and find it and put it in the chat, but there was a really great segment on 60 Minutes. Yes, I still watch 60 Minutes, where they talked about this, about an AI bubble in general, right? Because we keep seeing this infusion of capital and great points have already been made about like, are we actually going to see a return on investment on all of this? Or are we really just seeing speculators coming into the market, which is a yes, we know that for sure. Um, and yeah, there's definite differences in these companies. I think using Harvey and Clio are great examples of this, right? Where Clio's been around for a long time, whereas Harvey, I'm not sure. I'm not sure where this company is going in a decade. I'm not saying that Harvey doesn't have something real. I'm just saying I'm not so clear about what's going on. I clicked the link in the chat about Harvey announcing AI patents, and it reminded me of an article I wrote in 2015 of a Vancouver lawyer who was doing the same thing using AI to track patents in North America. I'll try and find the article. I think it's 2014 actually. So, for them to say they're the first is, I already know that's not true. So, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, this kind of stuff is going to keep happening. And I think the real question is, when is this bubble going to burst and how it's going to burst? Because we know the regulatory part's not coming. And we know if you're investing in the market right now, you're investing in this. Like, I'm not sure what else people want to invest in right now if you're going to talk about technology, especially legal technology. So, yeah. And of course, go Blue Jays go. But, I'll be saying that throughout the duration of the show.
While we're talking about bubbles, I think this is a good time. Let's interject something that came up in our side chat that we all have throughout the week. My current pet peeve, which is companies who raise money and instantly go out saying, "But we didn't need to. We just sold off part of our company because we didn't need to." They are as I put it, I think they are the worst contestants on Shark Tank. I'm going to give away more of my company. I didn't need to. Clearly you did need to for some reason, or else you wouldn't have done that, or you're just stupid. And I'm assuming they're not stupid, so they clearly do need the money for something. So that's my current pet peeve. I ranted about that the other day. I think it was thematically linked to where we just were talking.
Well,
Yeah,
it's like
which was
it's like when
Harvey said something about
athletes.
that, right? Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's like when athletes like sign for like millions of dollars. They're like, well, it wasn't about the money. I'm like, no, it kind of was.
Right, right. And then it had been Filevine a few weeks ago that had said they didn't need the money, but what the heck, we'll take it. And then I guess somebody at Harvey said something along the same lines.
And to the extent, like, let's keep going with the athlete analogy because I think it's a good one. You could say it wasn't about the money. I came here because it's a better situation. They're a championship contender. The teammates, whatever. And so there is something to be said for, we did this because it was an opportunity to partner with Goldman, and we thought that was going to be useful to us. And like, even though we didn't need it, like this gives us like maybe that's the story. But like nobody ever says that. They always just like shrug it off, like don't even concern yourself with the fact that we sold more of our company away. It's fine. And I'm like, what? No, it's not. You've got to tell us why. Man.
It's crazy. Like I've talked to like tinier startups who are like, I don't take any private equity funding because it's a problem because of X, Y, Z. And like it's gonna hurt how I grow. And I really want to grow in a healthy way to establish that I can sustain myself. And with people who are like, oh, I just took the cash because like, hey, we're offering it. The cash isn't free, and it's not just equity that they're taking. They want an ROI, and they have control over that. How you get that ROI with that valuation, with all that cash put in, like Harvey, probably trying to be like the legal tech platform in all law firms. The problem is that like I talked to some law firms who were like, we like pay attention to like the updates in like Gen AI tools, and if there's some tool that offers like more capabilities, we will switch out. Is Harvey like as foundational to a firm as like like a legal research platform like a Westlaw, Thomson Reuters, or like even a practice management platform like a Clio that's like so ingrained in the firm that like it has really deep roots and you cannot really switch it out. Um, the problem with these Gen AI tools is that everyone is keeping an eye on what changes are happening, and it's kind of like a crazy race, and you're not getting that like that kind of like deep foundation that some of these legacy companies have, which they spent ages getting in the first place. And like, does Harvey have a higher valuation than Clio? It does. Does it have a higher valuation than Lexus and Thompson? I'm not sure, although I wouldn't be surprised, except, like, does it also have that, like, staying power and that stickiness too in the industry? Like, like I just don't see how you do this quickly because the legal industry doesn't, adopt technology this quickly. Like we have a slew of new investors in the space, and they're the ones who invest in consumer tech. Like I got to tell you, legal professionals aren't your average tech consumers.
Right. Yeah. It was interesting. I thought one of Joe's story picks this week was, I mean, we haven't even been talking here in this discussion. We're talking about Harvey and Legora, but we haven't been talking about VLEX, which of course now has a Clio connection insofar as there's a deal pending there. That acquisition deal is still pending, but VLEX is also becoming more and more of a major player in this space and has been. And Joe, you got a story about that this week. I mean, you want to talk about that for a second?
Yeah, I just thought it was interesting. So we all talked about the big Clio show and how they were, the big thing for coming out of it was this move to an enterprise play, and we were all like, will this work off? Will this work out? Can they execute this? It's a different kind of market, all of those conversations. And I think, this doesn't settle it by any means. But this week, Baker Hostetler signs this huge deal and sends out a press release that they're partnering and getting Vincent in there. And, like to do that at this moment, knowing what's about to happen, when you negotiate that deal and sign that deal, you're going in business with Clio almost certainly once this regulation clears this regulatory hurdle. So that said to me, when we were all like, can they pull this off? It seems like large firms are already have gone over the psychic barrier of we're making deals with Clio now. And so, yeah, and this isn't, to do everything, but it means they have a customer relationship with a large firm now. And that matters. And I think that's going to matter a lot towards the getting in the door to actually pull off this thing. So, it's not over yet, but it did strike me when I was seeing this as, this is kind of like that first sign that, maybe this wasn't wild-eyed, imagination time when they were going through that,
Yep.
Yeah, like we said last week, all it takes is one law firm all it takes is one big law firm, and all of a sudden there's more and more that want to get involved.
Well, I swear I'm taking off my 8 a.m. hat here. You guys know I'm pretty good at doing that. I'm wearing my journalistic hat here.
Well, you haven't had an 8 a.m. hat for very long, so we don't really know that. It used to be my case hat or something.
So is the logo like a clock with like with
Yeah.
the hands that go to 8 a.m.? Is that the logo?
Yes.
It's an hourglass inside the 8. Yeah.
Ah.
It's supposed to like an infinity sign, kind of. Is that what are you talking about?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The 8's like an infinity sign. All right, but so one thing that we already talked about last week that we all know is true is that it takes a long time for these large law firms to switch or choose software. So this deal with VLEX is not something that they heard the news about, the Clio acquisition and suddenly said, let's take a look at VLEX. It's something that's been in the works for years. I agree that there is what you are saying, which is that they weren't like, oh, crap, and backtracking. We're not going to do this because we don't know what this is going to look like. It does show some comfort level with this acquisition that's pending, but this is not something that was suddenly like a brand new thing. It had to have been in the works for at least a year. At least a couple of months. I mean, certainly preceded the news.
Yeah, I mean, Vincent's only existed for a year, so the deal couldn't be much older than that. But absolutely.
Well, no, Vincent's been around since before Gen AI. They modified it to become a Gen AI platform. But Vincent actually pre-existed even Gen AI.
Well, sure, but Vincent AI, the product they made the deal with, they
that's been more than a year. I mean,
well, they claim that they released it in 2024. I'm on their website now, so they say that's when it went out to customers to be bought. So started a little over a year. But yeah, no, absolutely, this predates. But they went through with it. Like they didn't say we're scared off by this, and I think that matters.
Right. And I agree with that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and Clio announced I think they announced their intention to kind of go after big firms even before this year. I think they were saying it even last year or maybe even the year before.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
so that's been in the works too. I mean, no, it's just what I meant by like law firms that follow is just the idea of like big law firms in general. They very much kind of follow the leader. Like if one firm has success with something, then a lot of other firms will do it. And so that's all it was.
Yeah, that's very true. I'm just thinking about the conversation I had with Joshua earlier this year, about the acquisition. They've made their intentions known, I think, pretty clear for the last few years. They've been going after enterprise. When I asked him about this, he said actually this isn't a shift at all, that they already were going after big law firms, that they already had big law clients, maybe just not in North America. So, um,
He's here. We can ask him. He's in the
we,
audience.
we can ask him. And so yeah, I do remember us having this conversation. So I'm not surprised. I think the timing is well planned, meaning they planned it right at this time after because exactly what you're saying, Victor, right? You want to keep the momentum going so that the other big law firms will follow. I think that's really the intention here because I remember with Vincent AI, I remember what you're saying, Bob. That product's been out for a while. I think it's been rebranded, is how I would say it. So like I feel like they're trying to kind of build a shift here that they've already been working on for quite a few years. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there's another big law announcement from them and say within the next 6 months. And, just putting that out there.
Yeah, for what it's worth, it originally came out as like this machine learning tool to tag cases so that they didn't sort of have to have humans going through and I think it was mostly for originated in Canada, I think, when they were first
It
started.
did. It
Yeah,
did. Yeah, I remember webinars about it, I think as far back as 2021.
yeah.
So, yeah.
I was at CleoCon in 2024 and I was talking to Jack, and he was talking about the strategy to go after those like larger law firms. So like this strategy definitely, to Julie's point, predates like, this acquisition. The acquisition was really just kind of like trying to put the strategy in action. And the VLX, the VLX acquisition was interesting because, like it was a huge company at the time because it had acquired or merged with Fastcase. And there were like rumors in the industry that Harvey was attempting or like had wanted to acquire VLX too. So like VLX, people saw as kind of like the foothold into these larger firms to some extent, or at least like a foothold in the exclusive legal research industry, which is shrinking or has shrunk pretty quickly since 2020.
Yeah. I think by I hate to give Joe two stories in a row, but I do think that by audience demand here, we should talk about this dystopian mock trial. It says Joe and Nikki noted. I didn't hear Nikki. I didn't hear you note it if you did, but
It was in my newsletter.
oh,
News.
okay, all right, good. Um,
Yeah, so
but yeah,
yes. Yeah, UNC, and I actually am going to set up and have a deeper talk with the folks at UNC, but I just wrote up the story real quick, but I'll have more insights hopefully in the future here. But North Carolina, they had a conference, the school did, like the university did, about AI stuff, and the law school's contribution to this was to set up, get the mock trial folks together, and they set up a mock trial and replaced the jurors with chatbots, specifically ChatGPT, Claude, and Grok. So they had this trial. The takeaway from the trial, and they set up this trial that like they were hoping to throw at the jurors as many kind of issues that you might want to test AI for. The accused was a black man, so they were trying a young black man, so like a teenager. So they were like trying to see if the AIs were gonna fall into the sort of racist hellhole that normal jurors might. And so they put the whole thing together, and the takeaway of watching the AIs deliberate and all that I heard was another law professor was live tweeting it and was just like, this is a dystopian hell. And we really, really should not be letting AIs do this sort of stuff. Now, I haven't talked to any of the supporters to see if they had different thoughts and all. I thought it was an interesting question, though, that philosophically, and this was kind of my take, philosophically, AI is very good at certain things and not very good at other things. And the entire AI industry seems to be based around the idea of trying to explain how it really could be good at the things it's not good at. I think that AI is a wonderful tool that probably would help out the advocates in a trial, make the best use of their time, make the best use of their direct examination and tracking what witnesses are saying and stuff like that. I do not think it's a particularly good tool to replace the jurors with. And that's what they did. And so I feel that was my kind of takeaway, that there's this race to always make AI do the thing that is probably the dumbest possible thing for AI to do.
I just would like to say that for the record, I, for one, welcome our new jury bot overlord. That's it. I just want to make sure that's out there in case this ever gets picked up by the models and, becomes part of the record that's looked at when they take over. So
I hope they're noting that you're sucking up to them as much as you can, so that when they do finally take over, you are going to get a position of extreme of power. You're probably going to be like the next attorney general under the robot overlord administration.
Yeah.
Can't be worse than the current one. So
Absolutely. I mean, it's recording us right now anyway.
Right.
Why do we keep giving AI jobs that they don't need? Like, oh my
Yeah.
God. It's in a university environment, and it's just like we could spend a whole hour talking about if we're gonna have AI as a part of jury trials, like you said, Joe, but best places to use it and best places not to use it. Let's fix the system by having AI as the jurors. That will fix all the problems that we've got going on with jury trials. Now I've marked myself for death by
okay,
AI, right?
okay. Let me play devil's advocate here, though. Okay, so we've seen some pretty dumb jury verdicts over the years, right? We've seen some juries do some pretty stupid things, or some pretty outrageous things, or some things where we're like, I don't know how the hell they got from A to B, or whatnot. So if AI can take some of that stuff out of it, what's the worst that could happen, right? That being said, a lot of things, there are a lot of bad things that could happen, right? But I mean, look, sometimes it's good to just kind of reaffirm these things, though, right? If like what Joe was saying, is that you can't really replace the human juror experience, and until you get to the day where you can like really kind of perfect this technology and get to the point where it can be a replacement, but that day's not here yet. And sometimes it's good to kind of remind ourselves that way, it's not always a doom and gloom, like, oh, AI is going to take over everything. It's going to, it's going to, rule us all. Maybe still might, but but maybe that day will just now be like a few months delayed as opposed to, tomorrow.
I
Yeah.
do think people are giving AI jobs they shouldn't have because they don't know what AI can do and cannot do. And it's kind of just like this idea in their head. I mean, there's been story after story after story about like corporations being like, we'll replace this with AI. And then like they're shoving AI down the throats of their employees. And it's not doing what they hope they're doing. And those investments don't have the ROI that they assume they will have because nobody understands it. And everybody's just talking in ridiculous, like hype, like robots are going to take over. Like there has been like no, or like very few instances of like sober and neutral, conversations about AI. And trying to replace an entire jury with AI is kind of like a ridiculous, public relations stunt by some tech guys who need to go outside like once every like few days.
Yeah, this
But one
point,
thing,
the point that Chuck is making in the chat, I thought was actually kind of interesting because Bridget McCormick, and we talked, I think, a few weeks ago on the show about their new AI arbitrator that they're going to be releasing in November, and of course, she was at a panel and asked about it and asked about hallucinations, and I think she went even beyond what Chuck's saying, insofar as she was saying I've seen, she was a Supreme Court, Michigan Supreme Court justice. She said, I've seen judges hallucinate and make stuff up all the time. Sometimes we'll send it back to the judge pointing out that it's made up, and they'll redecide the case and use the same made up stuff over again. And she said, even with lawyers, I mean, she said she's been seeing lawyers make up stuff in their briefs for years, well before generative AI came along. So in a sense, she almost feels like some of the talk about hallucinations, I don't know if she would have said overblown, but it's not necessarily new. It's a new flavor of it right now, but it's been going on for a while.
One
You
thing that I
also
say in my piece, oh, I was just going to
please.
say that towards the end of the piece, what my thoughts, and I think probably deserve more smart people digging into. What if we start thinking about ways in which we can use AI to make human jurors better at what they do? That's an idea, like something that a tool that allows them to, not lose track of piece of, facts in the whole record, like that keeps them on task. That's an idea that I think could be really cool. We just need to like focus on it. Yes,
We've actually had that kind of in courts in the past, even well before Gen AI became like a household thing. I'm not sure if anybody recalls the risk assessment tools that some judge have that essentially like, through a like, and it isn't, like that advanced. It's just like they like, like input a few variables and facts of a case, and the risk assessment tool can determine, the risk of a criminal defendant recidivizing, wait, cannot pronounce that word. The risk of recidivism.
Recidivism.
Yes, there we go. I was about to say like recidivizing, and that's totally off. And we've seen those tools, used by judges in sentencing, in pretrial detention. There was a huge, huge concern over a particular tool called Compass. ProPublica did a really good, series of stories on that tool. Just kind of, asking if the tool is biased against people of certain gender and race. And the argument with these risk assessment tools is that it keeps the judges way more objective. However, these are trained on, court case data that historically is skewed because our, criminal justice system reflects the biases and prejudices too that society has. So, like, we've had these tools in courts well before Gen AI, and they pose the question of like, are you really helping, judges and potentially jurors too, if they're ever, like a tool for jurors, become way more objective, or are you just creating a tool that like, propagates the institutional, biases that's inherent in the criminal justice system as it is?
Yeah. Well, I guess maybe all of this raises questions about whether AI can eventually replace lawyers and whether people really even need lawyers or they can just use AI. And both Julie and Niki sort of have opposite and interrelated in some way stories about that. Julie, you've got some I don't know, AI gone wrong, AI gone right in terms of helping people pursue matters in court this week. You want to talk about this?
Yeah, I picked two different stories because I thought it demonstrates like the various experiences people are having with using AI to replace lawyers. In both articles, it's quite clear people are self-repping the, pro se litigants with AI. They're making a choice. And so the one from the US is talking about somebody who had eviction notice and was successful with AI. And then another person in the article, there's a great line in there where, it hallucinates cases and she tells ChatGPT, hey, you really like, effed me over, and the ChatGPT says, I'm sorry. So I thought that was really nice little tidbit in there. But in the Canadian article, it also talks about self reps in BC. And of course, BC has the Civil Resolution Tribunal, but these are people who are going through other administrative processes. And one of the cases involves a multi-million dollar property assessment, I think between 13 to 19 million dollars. So this is a person, again, who probably could afford a lawyer, but is making a choice to do self-rep with AI. And so I find both of these articles fascinating because people are saying they want the AI and not the lawyer. And I know this is the big topic, this is the scary topic that we talk about. But I kind of think about this as these products being marketed, just to piggyback on the conversation we just had about how AI can replace everyone and everything. And so all these folks who actually have different choices and options are choosing technology over a person, not necessarily I don't like a lawyer because of XYZ. I like AI or ChatGPT for ABC. It's more of that marketing PR that keeps coming at us that AI can do everything. You don't need a person, you just need AI. Because there's a quote in the US article from NBC News where it says the person said it felt like she was talking to God, which gets us to a whole other conversation. Yep. Where yep. And then the CBC article, I found it fascinating that somebody who had a complex real estate case involving a property that was being assessed between 13 to 19 million dollars still didn't want a lawyer. That part to me blows my mind. So these behaviors to us as lawyers are like kind of like this doesn't make any sense, but again, I think it's talking to where we are as in terms of culture. And as lawyers, we have to think about that. Legal tech companies have to think about that when they're trying to sell these products because sometimes we talk about this, especially with pro se litigants, as people who don't have access to lawyers at all. But I find it interesting how these articles are talking about people where there actually were some options. I think there were options for them to get legal representation, whether paid or pro bono, but they made the decision not to. And I just find that whole thing, that whole behavior fascinating.
Yeah, I wonder because I was curious because that one, at least one of those in the NBC story, like the first case where the woman had a lawyer at the like trial level, then she wanted to appeal, and then she used AI for the appeal. It wasn't clear whether she did have an option or not. And I think, I hear what you're saying about some of the way that some of these products are being marketed, but I mean, there is also this just fundamental flaw in the legal system that hiring a lawyer is intimidating and expensive for most people, and they just feel like this is they either think they can't do it, and so this is their only option is AI, or AI just seems so easy. It's right there, chat with it, get some answers. It's not like having to try and figure out how to hire a lawyer, how to come up with the money to hire a lawyer. I think a lot of people are almost being backed into a corner of using AI because they don't have any other options.
The few times I've had to hire a attorney, I always realized I was really spoiled because I'm in this industry and I'm like, why is this so expensive? Did you use text? How long, like tech, like, like how long did this take you to draft? And like I could do this if I had XYZ platform that or so it's kind of like if you know there's technology out there that can do certain things, the expectation for the attorneys, changes. Like what they do isn't all that, like far out there. You can see a technology platform doing it, and it's not just like people's familiarity with like Gen AI that's kind of changing their expectations for attorneys. It's also like companies like Legal Zoom too, which are like we can do half these things for cheap. So like the kind of like mysterious I am an attorney, I can do crazy stuff that like nobody else can do. Like that's just not true anymore. It's they're kind of being they're coming down to like earth because the industry is becoming way more competitive and the consumers are becoming way more intelligent to some extent.
Yeah, and kind of, I mean, and here's the thing, like they were in housing court, right? So most of the time, most clients that go into housing court don't have lawyers anyway. So they probably would have had to use some sort of help if they went that route. They would have had to use some sort of help, regardless of whether or not, you know, um, um, what their circumstances were. So it just kind of shows like, I mean, I'm not saying, we talked about this ad nauseum, whether AI is capable of bridging the access to justice gap and everything like that, and everyone has very strong opinions about that. But the thing is that, like, look, a lot of these lawyers, they talk about, oh well, we're available and we can take these cases, but they're not taking these cases. A lot of them aren't taking these cases, or they're charging too much, or they're like Rhys said, they're behaving way they're intimidating, so people don't trust them or don't want to engage their services. And so there's a reason why people have to end up going pro se, and it's not always just purely financial. It's because they don't want to deal with lawyers. And until you kind of get past that or figure out ways to kind of take on this work for whatever money you're gonna get. I mean, people are going to be relying on these tools because it's just easier that way.
Yeah. Niki, you had sort of not quite the flip side, but kind of related story in asking whether will AI put lawyers on the chopping block?
Well, and I actually did, in the middle of that, I talked about the NBC story and some of the issues raised in it. And as everybody was talking, I was just thinking about the 3 articles that I wrote this week, only one of which I submitted for the purposes of this. I kind of just, one of my favorite things to do is to sort of, I love to go through the news and I love to pick random things, random headlines, and put the pieces together and kind of see where they're steering us, sort of trends across the industry, both externally and within legal tech. And that's sort of what I did with all 3 of my articles, including the one that I already put into the chat this week. And the idea across all of them is that AI is one way or another going to change how people get the legal representation that they need. It's going to change how they choose lawyers. It's going to choose whether they even choose a lawyer. It's going to choose how they want to pay for a lawyer. And lawyers and law firms are going to have to start changing the way that they go about providing legal services as a result. And so the article that I wrote for Above the Law was this, I was struck this week by the huge swath of layoffs across the broader tech industry. I mean, we're talking like thousands upon thousands of people, 14,000 from Amazon. And this has been happening all year. And Amazon just today came out and said, oh, it wasn't about AI, it was about culture. But earlier in the year, their CEO said, we're going to be making a lot of layoffs and it's all about AI. So they can say whatever they want, but everybody's betting on AI reducing the headcount and making it more efficient and being able to pay less and get more done. And this is happening across all of tech. And as I point out in the article, it's also has happened to a much smaller extent, when Microsoft laid off all those people earlier in the year. There were some in-house counsel and paralegals that were, a support staff, I think it was paralegals, that were also laid off. A much smaller amount. It was like 30 total compared to the thousands that they laid off. But you're going to start seeing in the more enterprise level, whether it's law firms or large companies with in-house counsel, that's where you're going to start seeing some of this chopping block stuff happening. But then the other threads that I'm seeing are that, as I talk about in this article, I refer to the some of the stuff that Julia talked about, which was people that were using from that NBC article. They were able to avoid hiring lawyers and representing themselves, some successfully, some not so successfully. And then also there was a lawyer that was cited in that same article who had set up a course sort of to help unrepresented litigants better use AI to represent themselves and check AI, like fact check it and ensure accuracy. And so sort of all of those together. And then the other things that I wrote about this week were the billable hour and how there was a survey from in-house counsel about how they were both using AI a lot more and also reducing the number of hires externally for what I like to call outhouse counsel, which they're not, but I can never get past that, outside counsel. But and that's a trend. I'm not the only one that said this, but all along I've always believed that the 2 primary indicators of that's going to impact the billable hour, 2 big forces, are going to be legal departments who are legal consumers who buy legal services on a pretty large scale within large law firms, and also insurance companies, because in the smaller firms, a lot of them do work for insurance companies, and they're very sophisticated, the buyers that have for 30 years now very carefully tracked the bills submitted to them and rejected them for stupid reasons. I used to be on the receiving end of that when I worked in a law firm. So they're going to start saying, you could have done this a lot faster because we know you could have. You could have used tech. You're not using tech. We're not paying for it. So you're going to start to see those line items. So, and that's going to trickle down. People are going to say, I'm not hiring a lawyer. Forget it. You just screw me over. I'm going to do it myself because it's cheaper and I'm probably going to get a better result. Even as lawyers, I don't, there are a couple times I have reluctantly hired a lawyer and I don't want to work. I don't want to get screwed over. I don't want to vet the lawyers. I don't want to go ask everybody in my community, my legal community, who's the best lawyer for this. You're giving away the fact that you even have problems, like, but, and then hiring the lawyer and dealing with the billable hours sucks. So, and then and then I talk about access to justice in my ABA journal article, when I was talking more about the relativity conference, but also just this idea of access to justice. And that's sort of the final thread. Like, people are not going to be able to afford lawyers. Lawyers are not meeting people where they need to be met, with better pricing, with predictable pricing. And so this is sort of a storm that was already being created. And I think AI is just sort of breaking things down. And it's the writing on the wall for where we're going to go in terms of how are people connecting with legal representation, and possibly not even connecting with it at all because they're going to replace it with AI. And I would just add that I have myself not hired a lawyer, and I've used AI as my husband, as I've navigated getting a trademark for my husband's making wine, getting a trademark for that, and also licensing. Instead of hiring a lawyer, I've used generative AI to help apply for all the licensing that we need for our, and also the AP agreement with another winery. Like, I've done all of this. Clearly, I'm a trained lawyer, but I could have hired lawyers for all of that, and I didn't. And hopefully I covered all my bases using my legal skill set, but I'm not the only one that's doing that, right? And so I think the writing's on the wall, and it'll be interesting to see how things play out really over the next year, because I think it's going to start happening quickly now in terms of data points and statistics and how hiring patterns, what they look like with people hiring lawyers. And so we'll see, but.
Yeah, I totally
No,
agree.
I'm sorry, please.
No, please go ahead.
Okay. It's crazy how these companies are hiring people and they don't even have like a return on investment on their tech, or how they're going to replace those jobs with AI. And the whole culture thing at Amazon was crazy. Is their culture just to like not have any more people? It just seems like they're trying to put the cart before the horse, and they're kind of propagating this idea that AI can do this because they essentially have to sell this to companies as a way to cut costs, and that's happening in the legal tech industry too. It's like, this will help you cut costs. We haven't seen that at all. We haven't seen law firms decrease their rates. We haven't seen like legal services become cheaper. The only area it's become cheaper is probably where people don't have to hire a attorney in the first place. That's probably the only instance and the only area where I see any cost savings.
Yeah, I was going to comment on, and I totally agree with what you just said as well. I think the insurance companies is really the canary in the coal mine there, right? Because we shouldn't think that insurance companies are not already trying to utilize AI internally. And I can think of some commercials here in Canada that are insurance related, car accidents, other things where they're talking about AI in there. And so when you talk about things like the billable hour, and cost savings, as you were mentioning, yeah, it's actually becoming an either or. Either you spend the money or you don't. It's not even just reducing, it's either making the choice to use it or not, which is why I found the Canadian article about the folks who were not hiring lawyers in BC fascinating, because they had already made a calculation, as someone had mentioned in the chat, that it was more efficient for them not to hire a lawyer and still go through the process. I think for legal departments and insurance companies, like you mentioned, Nikki, they're going to make these calculations really precisely and figure out ways in which essentially they'll just hire less lawyers or hire, less, lower retainers. There's already data out there that's showing these efficiency stats are overblown or that we haven't actually seen. We all know this, that it actually hasn't come to fruition. And the tech industry is a place of trends. And so if one company is laying off, then we're all laying off. They kind of do that as well without thinking of rhyme or reason. Um, the thing that I really think about in terms of Biglaw and all of this is, will we at some point see this trickle down to not just support staff being laid off, but even lawyers themselves? And that's a big question. I don't have an answer to that. Maybe that's too speculative at this point, but that just kind of depends, because if insurance companies and in-house counsel start to tighten their budgets even more, that is going to have direct effect on some of these big law firms, and we're already in an economic environment that isn't booming. So that's the big question in my head at the moment.
Yeah, that is awesome. Like if in-house counsel can, I mean, yeah, if the in-house counsel can replace some of the stuff that they outsource to outside counsel. I keep trying to say outhouse counsel, and it drives me crazy. And I blame Niki for sure for placing that in my head now. Outhouse counsel.
All right, well, we are just about out of time here. I'm sorry we didn't get to Victor's story because I don't know. Well, I almost want to bookmark it for next week because I thought it was an interesting conversation. It had to do with using LinkedIn to research jurors and the law firm actually getting in trouble for that. You'd kind of think it was a logical thing to do, um, but we don't have any time. So thanks to everybody for joining us this week, and I hope you'll all be back next week. Have a good Halloween
Happy Halloween, everyone.
Everyone.
Happy Halloween and go Blue Jays, go.
and go Blue Jays.